Welcome. In this video tutorial we will use WebLink to record gaze while participants view and interact with PDF documents. The tutorial will demonstrate the use of WebLink's PDF component. When participants view a PDF document, they can interact with it in ways that are not possible with stimuli such as images and videos. For example, PDFs can be scrolled or zoomed. In that respect, WebLink's PDF component is somewhat similar to its web page component, in that WebLink will record these interactions. Similarly, our analysis software Data Viewer has some special features such as scroll compensation for interest areas that can be very helpful at the analysis stage. So at the end of the tutorial we will take a quick look at some PDF data in Data Viewer. As before, we'll start by making a new WebLink project and saving it. We'll leave the experiment configuration settings at their defaults for now. Next, we add the PDFs that we want to display to the PDF folder of the project library. The Library Manager lets you interact with the PDFs you have imported, which can be useful if you want to check that you have the correct ones. I'm going to use WebLink to record participants' gaze while they read a couple of our PDF guides. For the analysis, I'm just interested in how long people spend looking at the figures compared to reading the text. First, we drag a camera setup component to the timeline. I'm going to keep the default settings for now. Then we drag a PDF component to the timeline. The PDF component has quite a few properties that can be adjusted, so I'll go through them one by one. As with other components, we can change the label and edit the source file property so that it points to the PDF we want to show first. The selected PDF appears in the preview panel. You will notice that some PDF tools also appear at the top of the preview panel. These allow you to interact with the PDF and step through the pages, change the rotation, and adjust the size and zoom level, and whether or not the PDF appears in full screen mode. In the PDF Components Properties tab, you can choose the start page and end page if you want to limit which pages the participant can see. A value of 0 for the end page makes the last page the end page. I want people to be able to see the entire PDF, so I'll leave these values at their defaults. As with the image and video components, you can change the background screen color if you want. I'll leave the default grey. You can also choose whether the PDF first appears in full screen mode, in other words without the PDF tools bar. If you choose yes, the tools will only appear if the participant hovers their mouse over the top part of the PDF. I want people to be able to use these tools as they read the PDF, so I'll leave this as no. You can choose whether to view the PDF in single or double page mode, as if reading a book. For this project I will keep the default single page mode. You can select whether the PDF will automatically change to the next page on scrolling. This is often the default behaviour when viewing PDFs in browsers or other software, so I'll change it to yes. As with the web page component, you can choose whether to record a screen capture video and whether that video contains computer audio. You can also adjust the video recording frame rate. The video capture can be useful at the analysis stage in Data Viewer, so I'll leave the default settings here. As with other components, the next section allows us to choose the message that is sent when the component starts and whether we want to record gaze data and log key presses and mouse events. I will leave the defaults. Finally, as with other WebLink components, you can choose whether the PDF is shown for a set time or until a response from your participants. I'll verbally instruct participants to press the spacebar when they've finished reading the PDF, but I'll also set a maximum time of 3 minutes too. Having adjusted the properties, I can now copy the PDF component and just change the source file property to show my other PDF. We are now ready to save the experiment and start collecting data. But before I run the task for real, I'll select dummy mode in the experiment configuration settings and do a quick test run to check that everything is working as intended. Here you can see both my screens on my setup, the participant screen and the WebLink preview screen. During actual data collection, the preview screen will also show the gaze cursors. Everything seems to be working fine, so I'll go ahead and record some data. I collected data from a couple of participants and have created a Data Viewer viewing session. Let's import the EDF files. First, let's take a look at how Data Viewer organises the data in the Inspector panel. As with web page data, PDF data is shown both as individual segments and whole trial recordings. The whole trial recordings contain the gaze data for any individual PDF, and each segment can be navigated to independently by clicking on these buttons. Note that by default the segments are grouped by PDF page and zoom level, so notice that page 5 of this PDF was viewed at several different magnifications, and these are grouped separately in the inspector panel. You can always change how your data is grouped by clicking Edit, Trial Grouping, or pressing Ctrl and G. I'll leave the default grouping for now. It's important to understand how Data Viewer displays data recorded with WebLink's PDF component. In the default Spatial Overlay view, the gaze data is shown over the whole PDF page, and the page is scaled to fit to height. So it doesn't matter what size the PDF was when the participant viewed it, Data Viewer will scale the page to fit the trial view window and overlay the gaze data appropriately. If the participant scrolled the page while viewing it, then scroll compensation is applied, just as with the web page data we looked at in an earlier video tutorial. Just as with web pages, you can zoom in or out, or click the Fit to Width button and use the scroll bar to move up and down. In the Playback Animation view, by default gaze is played back over the whole PDF page, which again is scaled to fit to height. Just as with the web page data, if you want to see things exactly as the participant saw things, you can click this button to play back the data over the video capture. As you can see in this segment, the participant actually scrolled up and down the PDF page, and the entire page was not visible all at the same time. For this segment, when the gaze data is played back over the video capture, you can see the fixations on the PDF toolbar. If we switch from the video capture to the PDF page view, the PDF is scaled so that it fits to height and the gaze cursor is no longer visible. Switching back to the overlay view, we can do things like create fixation maps. I'll create one for the first page of the Quick Start Guide PDF. First I select the grouping node, then I can toggle on aggregate view mode to include the fixations from all of the segments clustered underneath this node, and finally I can click the Create Fixation Map button. We can also create interest areas in the Spatial Overlay view. I'll just make one for this first figure. I can save the interest area as a template, and then apply this as the default interest area set to the grouping node. This will apply the interest area to all of the segments for this page. Finally, we can run the usual range of reports. Note the extra variables that WebLink provides when data is recorded using a PDF component. These include the page number, as well as the page width, height, orientation and zoom level. These variables may all come in useful at subsequent analysis stages. I hope you found this video tutorial useful. Please do check out the other videos in this series, and as ever, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact our support service via the support forum or email.